The first time someone looked into your eyes today, before they registered your haircut or your outfit or the sound of your voice, their brain ran a calculation, a trust calculation. Researchers who study facial perception have found that people judge brown-eyed faces as more trustworthy than blue-eyed faces in a fraction of a second. And here's the strange part. Even when the eye color was the only thing digitally altered on an otherwise identical face, your eyes did that, not your expression, not your smile. The exact density of pigment sitting in 2 small rings of tissue behind your cornea. And here's the thing. Brown eyes isn't one category. It's a spectrum so wide that a honey amber iris and a near black iris share almost nothing in common, biologically, except the umbrella term we use for both. There are 6 genuinely distinct shades hiding inside that one word, and every single one of them runs on a different piece of biology, sends a different social signal, and comes with its own hidden advantage. Different melanin loads, different light behavior, different aging profiles. Think about it. You've probably had someone tell you your eyes look completely different depending on what you're wearing, or the light in the room, or the time of day. That's not your imagination. That's optics. And your job today is to finally understand what your specific shade of brown has been doing for you and to you your entire life. Let's start at the lighter end, because that's where things get genuinely interesting first. If your eyes are light brown or honey amber, pale, warm, sometimes mistaken for hazel depending on the light, picture a cup of black tea held up to a window, thin, translucent, changing with whatever light passes through it. That's your iris. You're carrying a lower to moderate concentration of eumelanin in the front layer, the anterior stroma, and because that layer is thinner, light doesn't just get absorbed, it scatters. That's why your eyes seem to change. Golden in sunlight, greener under fluorescent light, almost gray on an overcast day. Psychologists call this the ambiguous eyes effect, and it's not just aesthetic. People form less fixed first impressions of you because their brain can't lock your eye color into a single, stable category. That sounds like a small thing. It isn't. Categorization is one of the fastest things a brain does when reading a stranger, and when it can't finish the job cleanly, it tends to linger a little longer. Look a little closer. You get reread constantly, which, and I know this doesn't sound like an advantage at first, means you're harder to typecast in a snap judgment. The cost is real too. A thinner, lower melanin stroma means more light is getting through and scattering around inside your eye, which is part of why light brown and hazel eyes report higher rates of light sensitivity and squinting in bright environments than darker brown eyes do. Your only job here is to stop fighting the ambiguity and start using it, because a face people can't instantly categorize is a face they keep paying attention to. Now move into golden and amber brown, that warm, flecked, almost honeyed shade where you can actually see little bursts of lighter pigment scattered through the iris like sediment settling at the bottom of a riverbed after the current stills. That fleck pattern comes from lipochrome, a yellowish pigment sitting alongside the melanin, and it does something specific to how people read your face. It reads as warm before it reads as anything else. There's research on facial first impressions showing that lighter, warmer toned brown eyes are consistently associated with words like kind and approachable faster than darker eyes are. Approachability judgments happening in under a second before conscious reasoning even kicks in. That's the warmth projection effect, and it means strangers default to a baseline of ease around you that other shades have to work harder to earn. Biologically, you're sitting in a decent middle ground, more UV filtering than the lighter shades, less than the darkest ones, moderate light tolerance. The trade-off is that approachable can tip into unthreatening in contexts where you actually want to project authority, like a negotiation or a leadership moment. Here's the strategic insight your biology hands you for free. You don't have to manufacture warmth in a first meeting. Your eyes are already doing it. Your only job is to spend that trust deliberately, in the moments that count, instead of burning it on small talk. If this is starting to make you rethink things you've noticed about your own face for years, but never had a name for, stay with me, because we're only about halfway through the spectrum. And the deeper shades get even more counterintuitive. Medium chestnut brown is the shade most human beings on the planet actually have. Think of it as the base coat on a canvas before anyone's painted on it. not empty, just unclaimed. It's the biological default, the most common eye color worldwide, by a wide margin. And that creates something specific, the neutral canvas identity. Your eyes don't send a strong signal in either direction. No standout warmth, no standout intensity. In perception research, this is actually where the baseline trust effect sits most cleanly, because you're the shade people's brains are calibrated against. You read as a normal faster than any other shade, and normal, in split-second judgment, reads as safe. The risk, and I won't pretend it isn't real, is that safe can slide into forgettable if you're not doing anything else in the room to hold attention. But here's what's fascinating. Because your eyes aren't doing the work of standing out, every other signal you send gets amplified by comparison. Your expression, your tone, your timing, none of it is competing with your eye color for attention. Your only job is to stop assuming neutral means invisible. Neutral means undiluted. Whatever you projects clean. Deep chocolate brown is where the biology starts working harder for you. Picture a dark wood table, sanded smooth, no grain visible from across the room. That's the uniformity you're carrying. This is dense, uniform pigment. With very little fleck or ring variation, the iris looks almost solid in most lighting. And here's where the trustworthiness research gets its strongest signal. Studies on facial trust judgments have repeatedly found that darker brown eyes are rated as more trustworthy than lighter eyes, independent of facial shape. And researchers suspect part of this is because uniform, dark pigmentation gives observers less visual noise to parse, a steadier read, a face that feels more settled. There's also a practical advantage most people never connect to their eye color. Dense pigment absorbs more visible and UV light instead of scattering it, which means less internal glare, better contrast in bright conditions, and measurably lower reported light sensitivity than lighter shades. Your eyes are quite literally built with better glare control. The trade-off is that dense, uniform pigment is also harder for other people to read emotionally in real time. Micro changes in pupil dilation and iris texture are simply less visible against a darker background, which means in a negotiation, an interview, a poker game of any kind, you have a built-in advantage almost nobody else on this list has. Your only job is to stop worrying that people can't read you as easily. That's not a flaw, that's leverage. Then there's dark brown, the shade that borders on appearing black in most lighting, where the pupil and the iris almost blend into one dark field. Think of it like a moonless lake at night. You can't see where the water ends and the depth begins. And that's exactly the point. This is close to maximum melanin density in the iris, and it creates something psychologically paradoxical. Dark eyes read as both more intense and, in warm contexts, more inviting. Researchers call this a kind of dominance-softening paradox, where the same visual intensity that reads as commanding in a professional setting reads as magnetic in a personal one. Context does almost all the work here. And that's actually your advantage, because it means the same eyes are doing two completely different jobs depending on the room you're in. Biologically, this density comes with real payoff. Higher melanin concentration in the iris has been associated in ophthalmic research with somewhat lower rates of certain light-related eye conditions, including some forms of macular degeneration, compared to lighter irises, likely because that pigment is absorbing damaging light before it reaches deeper structures. The tax is subtlety. Your expressions have to work a little harder to register at a distance, because there's less visible mid-tone pigment to catch light and movement. Your only job is to stop softening your presence to compensate. Your eyes are already doing the intensity. Let your expression catch up to it. And finally, black-brown, or near black, the rarest end of the spectrum, where iris and pupil become almost indistinguishable to the naked eye. Imagine looking into a well at midnight. You sense the depth before your eyes ever adjust to see it. This is about as much eumelanin as a human iris can carry, and it produces what researchers sometimes call involuntary visibility. You don't choose to look intense. You simply do in almost every lighting condition, whether you want that read in the room or not. This is the maximum expression of the pupil camouflage dynamic, where other people genuinely struggle to track your pupil dilation, one of the oldest nonverbal trust signals humans read in each other. That's a real cost. Some of the subconscious warmth cues other people send effortlessly, you have to send more deliberately, through voice and expression, because your eyes aren't leaking them automatically. But the light protection is at its biological maximum too. This is the most photoprotected iris type there is. The strategic insight here isn't subtle. You were handed an intensity you didn't ask for and can't turn off. The only real choice you have is whether you own it on purpose or let people assume things about it by accident. So here's where all of this lands. There is no better shade of brown. Every single one of them is running a different biological strategy, different pigment density, different light behavior, different social signal, and every single one of them comes with a genuine advantage and a genuine cost that the science backs up completely. The lighter shades get reread constantly and stay harder to typecast. The mid-range shades disappear into neutrality and let everything else about you get amplified. The darker shades read as trustworthy and steady almost by default, with real biological light protection built in. None of it is destiny. It's a starting condition, an operating system running quietly behind every conversation you have, whether you've ever noticed it or not. So tell me, what's your exact shade of brown? And what's one thing you've actually noticed about how people react to your eyes that you never had an explanation for until now? Drop it below. I read everyone. And if this finally gave you a name for something you felt your whole life but never understood, hit the like button. It's a small thing on your end, but it genuinely helps this channel keep making videos like this. Subscribe if you want the next one, because we've barely scratched the surface of what your body has been telling people about you without your permission.